Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we got a really fun comparison video. Behind me, you'll see the Honda CRF450RX, which we'll be comparing to the Honda CRF450X. And while these two bikes share very similar names, we're gonna compare some of the differences and some of the similarities of these two fun red machines. Now, if you were to go into a dealership right now and ask for a Honda CRF450, they would offer you 6 different models. There is the RS, the R, the RWE, the RX, the X, and the L. And while these are all pretty much based off the same or similar platforms, they're all designed to do a little bit something different. So the standard CRF450R, which is the flagship motocross bike, we did a full breakdown in our recent 450 motocross shootout. You can check that out in our other videos. I'll tag the card up here. And then you can also check that out at the Cycle News magazine, where we did a full breakdown of all the machines, full spec sheets, everything like that. So just right off the bat, the RX is more of the competition off-road use. So that's gonna be the GNCC guys, the Sprint Enduro guys, the Works, the NGPC, kind of more of the Grand Prix off-road racing, where the X is gonna be more of like the dual sport-ish. That's actually, the L is the full dual sport, but the X is more of like the trail version. So like, I always call it like the CRF450F in a way, if that makes sense, kind of the trail inspired version. But let's break it down into more of the in-depths of the similarities and the differences. What you'll find is that one letter really makes a big difference. The CRF450X and the CRF450RX are Honda's latest offerings in the 450cc 4-stroke off-road market, and despite their similar designations and appearances, they are two very different animals. Let's start with the CRF450X. This bike has been in Honda's arsenal since 2005, and it's well into its 3rd generation after getting a significant redesign in 2019. It's seen no real changes since then and is now regarded as the company's high-end trail bike. It's not considered a race bike, so to speak, like it was in the early days with the 1st gen. This bike has many victories south of the border in races like the Baja 500 and Baja 1000, but of course those winning bikes are highly modified. Since Honda now markets the CRF450X as a trail bike, Honda chose to make the X California green friendly and is the last of the breed. You won't find any other California green sticker 450cc off-road motorcycles on the showroom floor these days. The 450X is closely related to another red bike in the Honda family, which is the 450L, the street legal or dual sport version of the CRF450X. The X is essentially a stripped down version of the L without the blinkers, taillight, license plate, and everything else you need to keep the street police away. And the X isn't as choked up with emissions as the L is. Like the motocrosser, the RX is classified as a closed course off-road motorcycle, meaning it's not EPA approved for trail riding, unlike the X. Honda essentially took its CRF450R motocross bike and made it into an off-road race bike. Simple as that. The RX first appeared in 2017, replacing the X as the premier 450cc 4-stroke off-road racer, demoting the X to the trail riding status. Just the bare minimums were performed to the RX to make it more off-road compatible. The RX has an 18-inch rear wheel, a higher capacity fuel tank compared to the 450R, a kickstand, a skid plate, handguards, and a more off-road tuned suspension package. The latest 450RX took on many of the same upgrades as the current 450R motocross bike, including a smaller throttle body, modified engine intake, and a new cam profile. Right off the bat, several differences between the X and the RX are worth noting. The X has a wide ratio 6-speed transmission. The RX has a close ratio 5-speed gearbox. The X has a cable actuated clutch. The RX is hydraulic. The X has the CRF450R's previous generation frame and engine, where the RX is the current generation. They'll both share the same Unicam 4-valve engine platform. Both bikes are fuel injected, the X via a 46mm throttle body, the RX via a 44mm throttle body. Like the latest CRF450R motocrosser, the RX features launch control, traction control with 3 levels, and built-in selectable engine modes, 3 to choose from, all accessed via the same handlebar switch on the left side of the bars. The X has no such offerings. Like we said earlier, the X has a headlight and the RX does not. The X comes with an LCD meter that keeps track of mileage, speed, and fuel levels, where the RX does not. The tires are different too, as the X comes fitted with Dunlop MX52s and the RX comes outfitted with Dunlop Geomax AT81s. Both bikes come with similar Showa suspension components. Up front, you'll find 49mm coil spring forks that are fully adjustable. They're essentially the same forks except for settings, and the lower lug on the X's fork is different to accept the drive mechanism for the X's meter. Mechanically, their shocks are the same internally, but the bodies are slightly different. Wheel travel is essentially the same on both bikes, as is ground clearance, seat height, and fuel capacity. However, the X has nearly half an inch longer wheelbase than the RX, and the X's rake is kicked out about half a degree more than the RX. But here's the big one. The X is approximately 24 pounds heavier than the RX, which is significant. It's the price the X pays to be EPA friendly, thus trail legal in California. And all 50 states get the California version. Regarding cost, only $100 separates the two, with the RX going for $98.99 and the X going for $97.99. It's funny how two similarly looking motorcycles can perform so differently. Both bikes do what they are intended to do very well. The X is a lot more tame on the trail, and the RX wants to go fast between the green and checkered flags. With its broad power band, smooth delivery, and versatile 6-speed transmission, the X's motor is extremely easy to control. It's unintimidating and still has plenty of get up and go. After all, it is a 450. Match that with the cushy suspension and easy ergonomics, and the X is a joy to ride. At low to mid RPM, the X loves to bop around and play, and best of all, flameouts are pretty rare on the X. At higher RPM, the X doesn't really disappoint either. It makes excellent and respectable power overall. You won't miss not having power modes, you simply just don't need them with this sweetheart of a smooth motor. Perhaps the most impressive thing about the X is how well it runs and performs right off the showroom floor. Even though it's a California green sticker bike, there are no throttle stops to surgically remove, no mystery wires to cut, no baffles to bash out. You just get on, push the button, and go. And its long wheelbase and kicked out front end compared to the RX make it very stable at speed and over whoops. It's really no wonder why it's a hit in Baja and the wide open deserts. If you like to ride fast and hard all the time, you'll find the X's suspension is a little on the soft side, but for normal riding and a rider who's an average height and weight, Honda pretty much nailed it. The clutch has a good feel and the pull is exceptionally light for a 450. Remember, it is a cable clutch. The easy to read meter is a nice addition too, and our knuckles appreciated the stock plastic handguards. We would rather have solid mounted guards to the bars, because since you adjust the levers, the handguard moves with them. It's reassuring to know there's a solid skid plate protecting the lower frame rails and engine cases, and we're a fan of the headlight on the trail bikes, though we wish the X's was LED instead of halogen. The MX52 tires are technically discontinued, but still come on the X. They're a little stiffer than the AT81s that come on the RX, but the 52s are a little more durable and less prone to flats. Honda also went with the MX52s because they're quieter on the pavement, which enables the X to pass EPA's ride-by sound test. There are a few things we don't like the X though, like the weight. The X is downright heavy at a claimed 275 pounds. This makes it a handful over loose rocks and anything very technical, especially at slower speeds. Its tall 38-inch seat height doesn't help here either. And the X is a bear to pick up if you have to drop it. Like we said, that extra 24 pounds really makes a difference here. Compared to the X, the RX is almost like comparing apples to oranges. They are very different motorcycles. The RX is all about going fast. It's way more aggressive than the X, has way more outright power, and hits much harder. You can manage that hit somewhat via the 3 engine modes, but even in the mildest mode, the RX still rips. In the tight stuff, the X feels like a lot of motorcycle and wears you out after a while, and it flames out a little more than the X. It's just not happy in these conditions. Instead, the RX wants to spread its wings on more open terrain like Western-style GP tracks or even the motocross track. It's in these settings where the RX really shines. It has the suspension to keep up here too. However, it is a little stiff for trails. It's a little too soft for motocross, but just about right for the GP tracks or the aggressive off-road playing. Compared to the X, the RX feels much more agile and lighter, and you can hit jumps with more confidence thanks to the beefier suspension setting. The RX has an excellent clutch, solid brakes, and a 5-speed transmission that is well mated to the bike's overall power delivery. It's hard to say that one bike is overall better than the other bike. They both fulfill their job titles exceptionally well. If you're looking for an easy-to-ride trail bike that can tackle just about anything you put in its way, the 450X is an excellent choice, and you know what the X can do in Baja. It's a honey of a bike that's easy to ride and a ton of fun on the trail for both lesser or more experienced off-road riders. But here's the catch, you have to deal with the 275 pounds. The 450RX on the other hand just wants to go, go, go. Twist the throttle for the first time and you'll understand. Without question, the RX is aimed at more experienced off-road riders whose interest is racing and getting to the checkered flag first. This motorcycle is undoubtedly capable of doing on the more wide open tracks such as Works and NGPC racing. And if you like to dabble in motocross, you have no fears to go for it. The RX won't disappoint here either. So thank you guys for watching. This has been a really fun test to do, comparing two bikes that are very similar in the names, but also have very different aspects once you take them out on the trails. As always, you can find a full spec sheet and write-up in the Cycle News magazine. You can check those out every Tuesday for free at cyclenews.com. Until next time, guys, we'll catch you out on the trails. Thanks.